Hi everyone. So in continuation to AWS interview questions, correct? So till now, what all things we have covered? So we have covered AWS interview questions, part one, part two, Terraform interview questions, part one, part two, and other Terraform related videos, day one, day two, like the continuation, the complete course kind of thing. And then we have this AWS related videos, correct? So you can watch out that as well. So, in today's call, we will be talking about the AWS interview questions, and that will be the part of three, correct? So, we'll be covering 10 more questions which has been asked or and which is being asked in the DevOps interview, correct? So either you are appearing for AWS engineer interview or the cloud engineer or for your DevOps, senior DevOps engineer or the DevOps engineer, correct? So in all these interviews, these kind of questions are now being asked in the interview, correct? So we will talk about these questions and few of the answers. We'll be taking the help of AI as well because I don't think that there's a need of writing concrete answers here, correct? You can make it like you get the overview and you can make a best out of that. So the question is, what is DHCP, correct? So before getting into the DHCP, let's talk about what is VPC. So VPC, the full form stands for Virtual Private Cloud, correct? And it is a kind of particular area or it's a individual area where you can, like, just to give you an example, correct? If you have a city, within that particular city you are creating your own house, correct? And within that particular house you can do anything whatever you want. You can sit anywhere, you can walk anywhere within the house, correct? You can construct anything within that particular house. So within this particular city you have created one house, and within that particular house you have the ownership to do anything, correct? So virtual private cloud, so it's a kind of private area within the cloud itself where you can play anything, whatever you want, correct? So that is the virtual private cloud. Just for the example, it's a so what is there in the VPC? It assigns you the number, it has the number of IP address range, correct? So if I have the virtual private cloud VPC, that means I have the few number of IP addresses available which can be allocated to the different resources, correct? Just suppose that 1 million IP addresses are available in the VPC, and these IP addresses can be allocated to different resources to perform the actions. If you want to understand more about the VPC, there is a video on my channel that you can check. So like the best VPC explanation, that is of the approx half an hour. It explains in the best way, correct? That you can watch out. So that is the full concept behind the VPC, correct? Then what is the DHCP? DHCP is a kind of protocol that is called Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, and it automates the process of assigning IP addresses, correct? So let's get into this chat GPT as well. And you can see Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. It's a network management protocol used to automate the process of assigning IP addresses and other network configuration parameters to devices on a network, correct? So DHCP is the part of VPC one only, correct? If you get into the VPC service, you will see that option, correct? So if I get into the VPC here, you will see the DHCP, correct? Where the DHCP option set, correct? One DHCP should be there. So it is used for assigning your number of IP addresses or the automatic assigning of IP addresses and other network configuration. How DHCP works? It has the DHCP discovery, DHCP offer, DHCP request, acknowledgement, correct? So whenever a device or client joins the network and broadcast a request, DHCP discover to find a DHCP server, correct? And then other parameters are there. Key functions of the DHCP is IP address allocation, configuration, and configuration of network parameters, subnet mask, default gateway, the internet gateway we use, correct? Domain name server, whether for this particular VPC DNS will be resolved or not, correct? So if you get into the VPC and if you get into the actions, you will see there are options. When you click on the edit VPC settings, you see the option of enable DNS resolution, enable DNS hostname. So these things comes from the DHCP settings one, correct? DHCP option set you can see. So all these configuration related to your networks are coming from the DHCP one, correct? So these are the features of the DHCP, and that's the concept behind the DHCP, which is a protocol of within the VPC, correct? Then second question is the third question is what difference between private key and public key? So whenever you launch a EC2 machine, correct? Whenever you launch a EC2 machine, just suppose that here you are on the AWS EC2, you launch one EC2, launch one server, that is the EC2 instance, correct? So one key will be associated with this instance, the one you will create, and one will be downloaded to your local system so that you can do the SSH command kind of thing. So the key which is downloaded at your local system, that is called as a private key, and the key which is associated with the server itself, that is called as a public key. Correct. So public key is associated with the server itself, while private key you will have as like it will be downloaded to your local system, and with the help of this private key, you can tell your server that I have the private key for you, from which is associated with you, and it will check for within the server, and it will allow you to connect the server. Correct. So the associated one question is also there associated to 27. There is a question number 30. Correct? Yeah, it should be 29. Correct. How does SSH work while connecting EC2 instance? So whenever you do the SSH command from your local system, it goes for like private key. You do the SSH hyphen I and the private key file, correct? The demo.pom or whatever the name you have created. Keep your name you will be passing, and then EC2 user at the rate IP address or that public DNS of the server, correct? That's the way of connecting your any of the EC2 instances, correct? So what happens here whenever you do the SSH, correct? It goes for the private key, correct? In the private key, it will check, and with the help of this private key, it will compute the public key, and it will get into the server like based on the IP address what you have mentioned, correct? It will get into the server, and from there it will see that whether this can be authenticated or not. So that public key is present in SSH slash authorized key, correct? So let's get into the chat GPT as well for your better understanding, and from there it authenticates, correct? So if you can see SSH secure shell, how it allows. So keep your setup connection workflow, correct? From your local machine, you initiate an SSH session using a command, correct? We used this kind of command. I've just did the for the better explanation. I have just did the chat GPT so that it will be easy for you to understand, correct? Even if I'm explaining this. So it goes from your local machine to SSH session using a command like this. Then it do the key-based authentication, correct? Your SSH client computes the public key from the private key. Private key is downloaded to your local system, and with the help of this private key, it computes the public key value, correct? And it sends the request to the EC2 instance, because in the here SSH command you are passing the EC2 public IP, correct? This one. So it sends the request to the EC2, and then the server verifies, correct? The public key is stored in this particular folder, SSH slash authorized key. Server itself verify that whether this public key and private key are same or not. If it's the same, like if it can be authenticated, if the key matches, the server sends a random challenge encrypted with the public key, and then private key decrypts the challenge. Your local SSH client, the one who has made the request, uses the private key to decrypt the challenge and send the response back to the server. Correct. Server verifies the response. If correct, it establishes the SSH session. Correct. So this is way how your SSH happens from your local system to the server. Correct. Then there is a question, what is SSM in AWS? SSM stands for System Manager, correct? The SSM stands for the System Manager. This is the Service Systems Manager. This is used for storing your parameters or connecting your EC2 instances without using any PAM key or something, correct? So it directly you can attach that, correct? And you can, so the use case of SSM is remote management, access EC2 instance without SSH or private key, that you can do, or automation of operational tasks, correct? Like just suppose that you are creating a few of the Terraform, CloudFormation templates, and you want the output of one CloudFormation template to be passed into the second CloudFormation template. So you can store the output in the system managers, and that output can be utilized in the second one, correct? So these are the way of using this system manager, automation of operational tasks, correct? And then supply chain software manager, parameter store. So yeah, I was talking about this parameter store, correct? Securely store and retrieve parameters. So you can retrieve this way, correct? Name API key or whatever the parameter you want to store, correct? That you can store. So for that purpose, we use the SSM. Then let's talk about the further questions. SSL termination at load balancer and ingress. What's the process for this to do? So if you have this certificate created, like SSL certificate, if you have, you can directly get into the load balancer. There are listener rules. There you can attach your SSL certificate, correct? For the SSL certificate, you can use this if it's your own domain. So you can use this certificate manager as well. And from there, you can create one certificate, and that certificate you can attach to your load balancer, correct? You can request a certificate, or if you have the certificate already, you can import it, and then you can attach it to your load balancer, correct? That you can do. So security of our EKS cluster. So how will you ensure the security of EKS cluster, correct? For that, you can enable your MFA, multiple factor authentication. You can have the secrets enabled for that. You can have role-based access control, RBAC you can enable so that only limited access can be granted to your cluster. And then using rolling update strategy, port security policy, these are all the attributes to secure your EKS cluster, AWS EKS cluster, correct? Then the next question is how to allow access from an EC2 machine to S3 bucket. So how your server can access your S3 service, which is present in the same AWS account, correct? For that, you can assign IAM role. Like whenever you launch a EC2 instance, in the options, there are option to modify IAM role, correct? There you can attach IAM role, and within that IAM role, there will be some certain policy. To that particular policy, you will give the S3 access, correct? So assign IAM role with S3 permission to the EC2, correct? So with the help of that, you can give your server access of S3. If you want to keep traffic inside VPC, use VPC endpoint, correct? That means if you want to make it public, you can do it directly. But if you want to do without any internet gateway, like your EC2 is not in public subnet, it is in a private subnet, correct? So, and then you want to connect your S3 with the EC2. So for that, you can use the VPC endpoint, and endpoint will be kind of your gateway, correct? So with the help of that, you can connect your S3 as well. Then next question is changes to make in S3 bucket to allow access to EC2 or any other resources, correct? If you want to give any other kind of permissions to different services, so you can do the changes in the bucket policy, correct? Or you want to do the cross region connection between the two buckets, correct? So for that, you can change the bucket policy, or if you want to have the cross account access for the buckets, so for that, you can edit the bucket policy, and accordingly, it will be it can access the two different buckets at two different location, two different accounts, correct? Then talking about the next question, explain how to integrate Jenkins with AWS service. Correct. So for that, you can create one IAM role assigned to EC2 hosting Jenkins, or create access key and use them as credentials in Jenkins pipeline, correct? So you can create one IAM role, you can assign to EC2, or you can create access key and use them as credentials in Jenkins pipeline, correct? Then next question is how to make EC2 highly available and scalable, correct? Whenever you launch your server, you have to make ensure that it should be highly available and highly scalable as well. So for that, you can use the ALB. Like what, whenever you are creating your application load balancer, correct? ALB stands for application load balancer. So that you can deploy in multiple availability zone. When we say the multiple availability zone, that means you will have to deploy it into multiple subnets. So your multiple subnet will have the multiple availability zone, correct? Then you can have the auto scaling groups attached to, like, to maintain your number of servers, so that your whatever the applications you have deployed, it will be highly available. And the traffic can be distributed to different number of servers, correct? So for that, you can attach ASG, and within this ASG you can create different dynamic scaling policy, like whenever your CPU goes up to 80%, few number of servers will be launched, or whenever thousand number of requests reaches up to one target group or the one server, the more number of servers will be launched, correct? So that kind of configuration you can pass in the auto scaling group. Then you can implement health check for your AC2, correct? Whatever the number of servers you are launching, you can implement health check for that. You can monitor your EC2 instances with the help of CloudWatch, correct? So that these are all the things that you can implement, and you can answer in this way. So your application load balancer needed at least two availability zone to deploy, correct? That is one of the parameters. Then if you have the EC2 in private subnet, so how will you connect? Correct. So for that you can use this NAT. With the help of NAT, you can connect the resources what you have deployed or the EC2 which is in the private subnet that requires some kind of installation. So for that, either you create a NAT and attach that particular NAT in the route tables of the private subnet, or you can do create a bastion. Correct, you will create a bastion, that means a public server, and with the help of public server you will connect to this EC2 instance. Correct. So that's these are the way of connecting your EC2 resources, EC2 instances. Correct. Then there is a question of trust policy and relationship in IAM, conditioning in policy or trust relationship. This one I have already explained in earlier video. What is trust policy, what is relationship in IAM. You can watch out the previous video. Then the next question is cooldown period in ASG. So this is a kind of relaxing period, I can say in the simple words. So whenever one scaling happens, correct, like your auto scaling group has performed a certain action, like once you had configured that whenever there is a 80% of its CPU utilization, it will launch a new number of servers. Correct, two number of servers. So auto scaling has detected that 80% utilization and it has increased the two number of servers. Now there is one more condition whenever it goes up to 90%. Correct. So ASG does the first action and does the second action. Correct. Between that, whatever the time it takes, that is called as cooldown period. So within this cooldown period, it will not perform any kind of action. So once it does one action, it requires few time, and after that it will perform second action. So that is called as cooldown period in auto scaling group. Correct. So these are the all the questions what I wanted to cover today. We will cover more questions on the AWS and other, but for now, this is all I wanted to talk about, and we will talk about few more questions in next videos. So thank you till the time. Bye bye. Stay tuned for other videos as well. Thank you.